Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rap Party. We want to thank you all for joining us again here today.
What's up?
Raise your glasses.
Raise your glasses.
Nadine is joining us. Here we go. Raise your glasses.
Hey,
Cheers.
what episode is this?
This is episode 3, technically. 3. We had a couple other episodes. They weren't official. This is officially
episode 3. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone.
Yes, we appreciate you guys always sticking with us when it comes to this.
And thank you to the Bricks for supplying our beer.
Absolutely.
So to the Bricks and Josh, as always, you guys are always fantastic to us downstairs. So the Rap Party is a show about indie films by indie filmmakers and indie film fans. We cover a lot of things. Sometimes we do go on the more Hollywood side, but we do tend to try to stick to the indie film side, especially for those of you who are out there trying to make your own indie film, trying to figure out how to get into the film industry in general, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. You can't ignore the Hollywood side. I mean, at the end of the day, right, we're all cinema lovers.
Yes.
We're not just filmmakers, so we actually like to go to the movies and watch movies as well. And so you can't ignore Hollywood side, but yes, the indie film is the world I think as filmmakers we're aspiring.
Well, I think that's where even most of the major filmmakers start. They start here at the indie platform.
Yes.
And I don't really know many filmmakers that just go, "Hey, listen, I just got out of film school and now I'm going to go ahead and sign a contract with Warner Brothers." Hey, I don't know why
you need a little boost. You need a little boost for that.
Yeah,
you got to know mommy and daddy, or
build a little cred.
Yeah,
Well, even with mommy and daddy, I'm still not entirely sure if that works, but
Yeah.
So let me introduce our panel here today. We have our normal guests here. We have Mike Brown from Digital Caviar, producer, writer, and director. We have Zaid Velez, producer, director, and composer. And to my right here, we have Nadine Rodriguez, 3D animator, artist, and film fan extraordinaire. Also, she'll be the one checking any of the comments on our session. So if you have any questions, anything you want to address, please send them over. Join in on the conversation. Join in on the debate. And I'm Damien Alpazar from 208 Monkeys. I do visual effects mostly, but creative director and so on and so forth.
Man of many hats.
Yes. And in the indie film, don't we wear a lot of hats? I mean, to be an indie filmmaker, you kind of have to wear at least 3 to 5.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think
sometimes 17.
In this industry period, you have to wear more than one hat. You
can't
just wear one. I mean,
well, I would say that the more independent you are, the more of your own crew you are. And we're going to talk about some directors, independent directors.
It's going to take you much longer to get where you want to be if you're only wearing one hat.
Yeah. It is, right. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of the filmmakers out there who started off as independent filmmakers, and you might not even think of them as independent filmmakers now, but they did have their start in the indie industry, so that is something very important to think about. And we have quite a number of things to talk about today. But first, I would like to kick it over to Nadine, who's going to give us some of the hot topics that are happening in the movie industry today.
Nadizzle.
So guys, among the many movies that are out today, coming out this weekend, actually tomorrow, is a film called Sammy Blood. It's written and directed by Amanda Kernel, and it's an adaptation of a short film that she had done, and she had shown on Sundance, and it did so well in 2015 that she turned it into this much larger film, which showcased the story of the Sami and the struggle of, do you leave your heritage behind to evade all that racism? Especially, it's this tale where you have to decide which battles you're gonna fight, basically.
Yeah, we saw the trailer to that. That looked pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it looks really, really interesting. Another film that's coming out this June is Lucky, written, directed, produced, and starred by Barry Kang. This one is going through a lot of film festivals right now, and it's really hot right now.
Are any of these films available? Any of those 2 films available currently on any platform right now?
Not yet. Not yet. It's after they go out to theaters. Like, they've been going through festivals for about a year each, so they've gained some ground, and
So we should expect them to see. We expect to see them probably on Netflix or any of the online platforms or.
I'm not really sure
if
they would go to Netflix. That's very interesting. I'm not really sure. At least for how I saw them, I think they're going to theater and then maybe later, like typical.
Maybe Amazon.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that probably Amazon,
cool.
but I wouldn't see it going to Netflix right away. I would probably see it in Amazon.
Okay. Nice.
Two films that they look like blockbusters, but they're, what do you guys think of if they're considered indie or not? Would be Atomic Blonde, directed by David Leitch. That one comes out in theaters in July 28th. And Logan Lucky, directed by Steven Soderbergh, in theaters on August 2017.
Two big films.
Wow,
Absolutely.
We've seen the trailers for those.
For sure, yeah.
So
if you haven't seen the trailers, definitely check them out.
I want to open it up real quick. Of those news stories, or was that was it, right?
There's just two. Well, the other news stories is Wonder Woman.
And
Martin Scorsese is writing about defending cinema as a form of art.
Okay, so what about Wonder Woman? I mean, you got me curious because I know what I'm doing this weekend.
Well, we're just gonna talk about Wonder Woman and the mixed reviews that it's gaining.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it was apparently flying colors. Everybody loves it.
Before
it even came out, like all the critics, like everybody loved it. Everything was flying colors. The direction of it was beautiful. The cinematography was beautiful. The acting was great. And then after it came out, now it's falling down a little bit. I did see some reviews that were saying how the direction was really well done, but any actress could have taken the role. Like the support wasn't really in the actress. Like she didn't have that much to do.
Interesting.
Her biggest points in the film were when she was quiet, which I haven't seen it, so I don't really know what to say.
I've heard a number of great things about it. So I mean, I'm not gonna let that
on-screen
ruin my
presence, huh? I don't know.
I think that's harder. First of all, one, if you say, "Hey, she was so bad that she wasn't talking," people that can act without saying a word, to me, is like that's impressive because most of the time you're gonna hear people talking.
Mm-hmm.
If she can control the scene without saying a word, that says a lot to me. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd love to see why they're saying that. I would definitely have to check it out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So of those stories and of those films in particularly, and it's interesting because we got into a little bit of a debate that I don't think was 100% resolved last time. And Mike, you weren't here last week, and Zaid, you said that you had a little bit about what went down. We have 4 distinct independent films up there. We have 2 that did the what we would call the
film festival
route, right? And then we have 2 that are getting dramatic releases that are theatrical releases that are not released by a major studio. So quickly, let me know your thoughts on the 2 differences, and let me know a little bit about what happened, especially when you started talking about this with some of your other colleagues.
I would like to start off with saying, how would we define an independent film? I think that was a question that was asked by many people behind the scenes after we filmed. Like, how do you define an independent film?
Yeah, well, some people still, I mean, we touched on this a little bit, but I think the debate's still out. And now that I have a fresh face here with Mike, I would definitely love to ask him first. Mike, what would you define as an independent film?
I mean, you guys kind of hit on it a little bit last week, but I think the original definition, the main definition of independent film, we'd start out there, is essentially a film that was created outside of the major studio system back in the day. Right? Yes. When studios were they were really the only people making films because cameras were crazy expensive.
Not accessible the way they are now.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, it was just high dollar stuff. I mean, you really could not go out there and make a film unless you had money behind it. Right. So, but now it's a different world, right? DSLRs introduce a whole nother world. And so it kind of broadens up. And I mean, to me, so now it's not just, I wouldn't say, I know I've heard multiple things, but I wouldn't say it's just money. I'm not on that bandwagon. I don't think that a budget defines whether a movie is independent or not. I do believe.
Why not?
Why? Because I think that there's films out there, and Zaid brought this up too, but I think there's films out there and there's filmmakers out there who have a passion and they have a vision and they want to make a film that is not necessarily in line with what the studio system believes is a sellable product. And so they go out on their own, whether it be a big director or small directors as us, I'd say on the smaller side of filmmaking, and you make your passion project. And you make your passion project. And whether it's $12, $15 million, if you got that kind of connection or if you've got that kind of capital that you can spend on your independent film, then kudos to you, man. Kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, well, if you got it, flaunt it, right?
I know one of the biggest argument was the whole, well, it's not an independent film. It's, $58 million, $60 million. That's not an independent film. Independent film is like something you'd see in a film, what do you call it, contest. That's an independent film.
Like a festival or something.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, like there's a gray area. Tears, as Noel Torres said it, shout out to him. We were having a great debate on what it was, and we finally came to this conclusion that, like Mike said, that there's not like a particular, like back in the day, what is the indie film? You don't know. I mean, I think, I agree with Mike, it always comes down to this. An indie film is the director/writer staying true to his art and not being swayed by a studio telling him how to shoot the film. He shot it how he wanted, he edited it how he wanted it, did it how he wanted it to be. Going back to the Scorsese thing, I wanted to touch on that too, because it is art, man. This is art that we do.
Absolutely. And whether you're rich or you're established or you're not there yet, right? It's all the same. One thing that I do want to add, which not a lot of people, I don't know if it was touched on yesterday or last week, but I'd say usually a big separation in what indie films are is whether you have direct lines to distribution, right? You see a lot of these independent films, right, that they come out and they have to go to the film festival circuit, because they don't have a direct line to distribution. They're looking for a distributor. Or they'll go a non-traditional route via not movie theaters unless they do have direct lines, so a lot of the films, even in the $12 to $15 million budget range, are still having limited releases. They're not going out worldwide. Why? Because they're independent films, and the big distributors aren't picking them up because they're not coming from the studio system.
Isn't that what happened to Moonlight? Like, it wasn't picked up at first, and after, like, it did a big impact. Absolutely.
Moonlight, Hell or High Water, which we touched on in some of our previous shows, and I mean, there's a ton of them.
John Wick was a big one.
Yep, John Wick.
That one was
and so
for those people who are currently watching the show and are trying to debate whether or not some of the larger films that we discuss are independent films, they can still qualify simply because of the way that they were distributed, whether or not they had that distribution coming up, the director's vision. I think you mentioned that as well, whether or not it was a vision from a director that the studio system may have not supported. Budget is no longer something that we're qualifying independent films as. Now we will eventually differentiate between, and we will talk about making a film on a budget, and today, in fact, making a film on a budget, no budget, and moving on from there. We're going to talk a little bit about that process, but we really are just going to qualify something that is outside of the studio system, budget independent, self-financed in some way, shape, or form, and that it ultimately,
no matter what the price is.
No matter what the price is, but ultimately,
George Lucas, Red Tail, nobody would pick it up. He paid the $59,000.
Absolutely.
Mel Gibson, nobody would
Apocalypto.
Christ.
Passion of Christ.
Passion of Christ. Nobody would back that up. He literally sold and he did everything he could to fund that movie. And he made it back like triple though.
Of course.
But
so that's the definition of the indie film. It is director, writer, driven per se, producer driven, not studio driven. It may get some studio support. It may get an outside major studio support. It may run through a film festival.
Yeah.
It can get to distribution many ways.
Although those two, Lucas and Mel Gibson, some people may argue and say, "Oh, well, that's Mel Gibson."
Well, if you don't agree, please chime in. We're more than welcome to. We'll debate with you.
Off his name alone, that's not independent.
We will debate with you. We'll talk about it. This is a discussion. We're defining it for the purposes of I know that we're gonna run into a gamut. We look at stuff that's on Vimeo. We look at stuff that's on.
There's no right answer.
There's stuff that's being produced here locally. There's stuff that's being produced, in New York. But just because you're produced in New York doesn't mean just because it just so happens that you were best friends with the DP or the cinematographer who happened to work on what's the one with Leonardo DiCaprio? I'm drawing a blank right now. He just won his Oscar for it.
Oh, Revenant.
The Revenant. Just because he happens to be your neighbor or your best friend, he wants to shoot your independent film. That does not disqualify your film. Let's face it.
But and the thing is too is I've met people out there who literally qualify an independent film as literally being crappy.
Yeah.
That's like, hey, listen, this is a crappy film. It's categorized as independent.
That's a horrible way to.
Of course, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Like, hey, you know what? It looks this way. The quality is not like. What's the best way to say it?
It literally has to look a step above homemade.
Exactly, yeah. The quality is not to Hollywood or theaters. I'd say theater is a better word for it. Theater standards. So it's an independent film automatically. That's how they qualify. And if it doesn't look like that, if it doesn't feel somewhat amateurish, right, then it's not an independent film. And I promise you, there's a lot of people out there who have said that.
Hey,
I heard that today too.
For those of you who are telling that to Mike, we totally disagree with you. Absolutely, 100%. Bye. We don't.
That's classified as garbage.
Come on the show and debate that. I'd love to do that.
Garbage.
All right, so let me ask you this. So, speaking of some stuff that's in the news, and speaking of things that are outside of the studio system, we do tend to talk about some of the films that are distributed through some of the channels that we commonly look at, which is whether it's a film festival or whether it's a online streaming service, Netflix, Amazon, YouTube. Yeah, they're starting to make films that have budgets, but really operate outside of the theatrical release and outside of the. They really do operate outside of that.
Well, they're quickly becoming their own studio.
Yeah.
I mean, and rightfully.
In 5 years, Netflix will no longer count. It'd be like Warner Brothers, Netflix.
I'd say it doesn't count now anymore as technically independent. It is a conglomerate.
The minute
absolutely.
The minute Amazon was Amazon. If I told you 5 years from now that a movie from Amazon was going to be nominated to win an Oscar, you like, fuck Amazon.
Yeah.
You never believe that. Netflix is there, dude. Netflix is
huge.
Qualifying to win for an Oscar does not disqualify you from being independent.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that
you would never expected it.
Yeah, 5 years ago, if I told you that Amazon Netflix is still good, but Amazon, not Amazon. You think Amazon is shopping? That's it.
Yeah, I think that Netflix. I mean, their approach to a lot of the films that they say are Netflix originals aren't Netflix made. But the thing is that they're offering a whole lot more money now for these films and to bring some of the bigger directors.
They're a gateway to the indie director. That's what I see them.
So
there's so many shows
Sci-Fi did this too, where it's a Sci-Fi original and the production wasn't done by Sci-Fi. So to segue to that, War Machine just dropped on Netflix.
Phenomenal movie. Check it out.
Okay, so
we'll start off with that. Loved it.
Yes. We will try to avoid spoilers as much as possible.
Even though it's not really a spoiler type of movie. I don't think you could spoil the movie. No, you know what I mean? It's not one of those like gotcha at the end.
Right. That's true. Okay.
So I think we're in a safe zone here.
Yeah. So we're in a safe zone. So we're going to talk about that a little bit because it is a film that was funded by Brad Pitt and his studio.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, it was funded. I found out.
Funded partially.
It was funded, and Brad Pitt. He's like, dude, I want you guys want to spend $50,000 at least, $50,000 on it. And they're like, no way. There's no way. He's like, he wanted to put more money into it.
50,000, 50 million.
50 million.
Oh, okay. Well,
50,
I was like, woo.
I was like, damn, Brad. Hey, Brad. He pulled out his wallet. And he's like, I got this.
Yo,
it's cash right there.
Got it. 50 million. They were at 29 million. He was trying to push for that extra 30. It may have been 30 million, an extra 30 million. And they were like, no, they're battling back and forth because it actually was out back in 2014, and 2015 it started, circulating. But Netflix bought it for 60 million, so they made that cap to be able to get where it's at now.
So we're talking about a film right now that all in maybe 60 mil.
Yeah, I mean, think about it.
All right. So for a lot of you out there, you're like 60 mil, that doesn't qualify at all.
Started at 29 million, FYI. They got 60 million.
Right. Okay.
But we're talking about breaking ground with Netflix. Again, they're starting to get bigger and bigger.
They're not there yet.
Hence the reason towards the studio. It's happening.
Well, because Netflix also broke out films like Birdemic.
Yep.
And if you want a film that was independent and crappy,
but
by your friend's definition, by all means.
On Birdemic. The views on Birdemic.
Again.
Great host.
Hey, listen. If you're either Blair Witch or Birdemic, according to most independent filmmakers out there.
Nadine, while we're talking, can you pull up War Machines?
Yes.
I like to give the log line a synopsis. You know what I mean for our fans out there who haven't seen it or haven't looked it up yet.
It's based off of an actual book, but they had to futz around with the characters because they didn't want to go through the legal issue. Because it was actually written. The book was written by the Rolling Stones, guy who.
Yep, got you. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, yeah. So while Nadine pulls that up, so here we are talking about a film that had 30 to 60 million, let's say somewhere in there, and Brad Pitt put up most of it, and his production company was a major part of that. I'm not saying it was all of it; it was a major part of it.
Plan B and one more company I forgot to come.
Yeah, and we're talking about director's vision.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about something that was not going to be released in theatrical release around the world or anything like that.
2014.
Would you call it a semi biopic?
Semi-bio.
Yeah.
Semi biopic.
Yeah,
Right.
semi-bio.
Yep. Kind of like it had a
very character driven.
Yeah, kind of a war dogs, right? War dogs.
Yeah.
Had a war dogs feel. You know what I mean? Like that kind of. Definitely based on a true story. Yeah.
My favorite part.
Whoa.
I just dropped my timer. I'll be
Sorry,
back.
guys.
This is what happens when you're live.
Second floor over.
Did you get
Yes.
log line? So what we got?
I'm
What's
back.
War Machine? What's it about?
This is what happens when you do this stuff live. I could have edited that out, but
A successful, charismatic 4-star general, Glenn McMahon, leaps in like a rock star to command NATO forces in Afghanistan, only to be taken down by a journalist no-holds-barred expose.
okay.
Yes.
So?
And it is pleasantly surprising.
Yeah.
I can tell you that much. On the comedic
it's a
level.
very wonderful dramedy.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Dramedy 100%. It caught me off guard. I went into it expecting a serious movie. Like I was like, okay, all right. I didn't do too much research. I didn't look it up and figure out what it was about really. I just saw, we were wanting to watch it. And so I went into it expecting it to be more serious and more biopic. And it's actually a little bit of a little jab in the side to the military and the American mentality on the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, definitely.
Which was surprising and ballsy, which I thought it was great.
Probably.
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Critically, though, Nadine, you saw some of the critic reviews.
Yeah, I saw the reviews before I looked it up, and I was very confused because the critiques were mostly like Netflix did them a favor by taking this off of theaters, and they're never gonna do well, and the movie is just guys sitting around and talking. It's just heads floating, and I was very confused. I was like, okay, what is this about? They're not really talking about what it is about, and they're talking about how it's not cinematic. It's not a cinematic movie. And then when I pulled it up, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like this. It's a military movie. I'm not gonna like this. And then it started out, and it was pleasant surprise because it has that jab, and I think that's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why it didn't get the best reviews.
Absolutely.
Because it's such a jab into that American, belief and something that so many people had ingrained into them that this is the right thing to do.
So do you think it was a little ballsy to drop it on Memorial Day weekend?
Oh yeah.
It's purposeful.
That was on purpose.
Purposeful but ballsy. They definitely were making a statement.
Yep.
But the movie is a statement.
Yes.
That's what I love about. I love statement pieces. I love when a writer or a director or somebody gets out there and they've got something they want to say, and they do it creatively.
Right, but it's not like a Michael. I can't.
No, Michael Moore. This is not a Michael Moore. I'm going to come out and
Moore.
Preach to you. That's what I'm
It's
telling
not
you.
that. It's not that at all.
It's so well done. It's so well done.
Oh, yeah.
The characters are character. It's just it's the dash of subtlety that makes it so great. I mean, it's not the
Zaya,
best
let's hear
movie
from
I've
you.
ever watched in my life.
I would say right out the gate when I first of all, it was shot beautifully. I love the way it was shot. I love the comedic timing was awesome. I love the narration in the very beginning and wondering who this voice is, and who is it. I'm still looking for who it is, and how he introduced all the character. I love how he introduced Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt did phenomenal. always stay in the character. And then when he when he mentioned his hand is always like holding a cigar, I find myself looking. Oh, hey, he's doing it. Oh, he's doing it. I thought that was pretty awesome. I love this character. When he had something to say, he wasn't well spoken, but he tried. And he'd say what's on his mind. So I thought overall, man, the movie's phenomenal. Man.
For sure.
Honestly, going into the film, my fear was that I was going to see a reenactment of Brad Pitt's take in Inglourious Bastards. Mm-hmm. I originally thought that I was going to go and see.
Interesting.
I originally thought I was going to go and see Brad Pitt do Inglourious Bastards, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I've seen this before. Except that instead of it being World War II, it's now Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that's what I went in with. Pleasantly surprised. Brad Pitt does. It is a completely different character. In fact, one of the things that threw me off at the beginning, Mike, you and I were talking about this before the show, was that everybody is kind of a caricature.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's the jab in the side.
Yeah, that's the jab in the side. It's a little over, like, you're like, okay, that is atypical general. Okay, that is atypical warhead. That is atypical politician.
And at first, I was even like to go as far as like, I wouldn't expect Brad Pitt to be a bad actor, but I wouldn't expect him to be
that role
bad. He's not bad. It becomes a really good role once you know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what I loved about it. But when I first went into it, I'm like, the first couple minutes, I'm like, what is?
And that's the other thing with this film, because another of the criticisms that I found was that it wasn't cinematic, stationary shots. But it had beautiful shots, and it's just that it shows you the other side of the war, the behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. It's not all just explosions to draw your eye and distract you from all the mess. It really is, this film is driven by the acting, by the writing. Everything is in the dialogue.
I think that's what people actually felt that was dark without even seeing what it is, what the movie's about. Mm-hmm. Right away when you think Afghanistan, people are like, I don't know.
Again, it touches on it pulls on touches on sensitive little notes and strings, but it does it in a, I don't want to say tongue in cheek, but it is a, hey, remember that? Remember that? Yeah, remember how that went down?
It's very aware. It's very the writer is very
self-aware.
Yeah, definitely. It's very self-aware. It's intelligent. Yeah. It's intelligent. And a lot of people don't like that. Listen, a lot of people don't like somebody coming out there and telling them a different side of a story. You know what I mean? Or having an opinion. And that's what I love, when somebody can do that and you don't feel like I'm getting spoken to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, here's the message.
Don't lecture me.
When I can just literally just fall in love with a story, and at the same time go like, I feel like I just got a little smarter by watching this movie. Yeah. I felt like I learned something new. Probably sometimes my favorite movies.
I loved his wife playing that role. Just showing how strong she was.
Oh, that scene broke my heart. Oh, that scene was so powerful.
And it's so true. It's so true. I was in the military for 5 years, and I watched that. You know what I mean?
It touched me, man. I was like, that was some deep stuff.
For sure.
And there's time, and she was, I'm not gonna say crutch, but she was his spine.
Yep.
At some time,
and you could tell she had the weight of the world on her shoulders.
And she held it in, but she still got tears coming. It's a great movie. It's not sad. It's actually funny because a lot of the characters are, they make you like. I love that one guy.
Somebody paid attention, man.
Yeah.
Somebody paid. Yes. Listen, you can't do that little jab in the side tastefully like that unless you 100%. Through and through, understand the process, and understand the people, and understand the situation, and that it gives me goosebumps, man. But that's my type of thing, though. You know what I mean? And so they studied this. They really spent their time to learn it, so that then they could tell it in their own way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Watch the movie.
Listen, if you.
I was thinking about the one where they're congratulating. And there's a scene early on where they're actually congratulating Brad Pitt. Guys, they're introducing him to everybody here, clapping, and. Like one of his second in command, he's like, "You're welcome."
For sure. All right, cool.
It's those kind of characters.
Yeah. Well, listen, we all found it great. We don't have a star system yet, but if I were going to give it out of 5 stars, Nadine, what would you give it? Just real quick.
I would give it 5 stars, just because I fell in love with the movie. There's very few war movies that I'll watch, like current war movies that I'll watch and I'll be entertained, and this was entertaining.
Nice. Zaid?
I honestly too. I'd give it a 5. I went in and I did not expect that movie, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Not
You're
the way it was
thoroughly
written
entertained.
perfectly. The characters were played perfectly. It was just shot great. It's not gonna be this beautiful Scorsese, but the shots were beautiful, man.
Yeah.
There's times where he's walking
Yeah,
through.
absolutely.
I mean, it's a great movie, man.
I give it a 4.
4?
I give it a 4. Absolutely. I 100%. Yeah. 4. I'd give it a 4.
Right, and I'm also going to give it a 4, maybe even a 4 or 5. Mainly,
I didn't know we could do 0.5s.
Yeah,
I'd give it a.
I would give it a
You can
4.5.
always do
4.5. Okay, I'm just checking.
You know, 4.5.
Hey guys, this is democracy up here. You are not.
I didn't know there was a decimal system in this.
Are you kidding me? Come on, man. We do math up in this piece. No, really, honestly, it's a great film, guys. You will enjoy it. It's about 2 hours running time. It is definitely something you can put on. I would put it on a Sunday, chill out, watch it, pop some popcorn. Great little Netflix thing.
Absolutely.
Again, the monumental aspect of this whole thing is that this is the one in a series of films that Netflix is dropping that are, you know what, back in the day, straight to DVD or straight to tape was like an insult. Ooh, straight to tape, straight to DVD.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, hey, Netflix original, check it. And you're like, okay, I'm not so insulted by it. At the same time, I'm getting good quality productions. I'm at home. I'm enjoying a great film that I've seen for the first time.
And even if it comes in theaters, everybody's like, okay, is it on Netflix yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the movies are
For
now
sure.
going straight to Netflix right after
So
theaters.
this is the dawn of a new era, and we're gonna probably circle back around
we're in
to
the
this
middle of dawn
multiple
of an era,
times
man.
because we have the YouTube Reds, the Amazons, the Vimeos, the Netflix. We have this streaming era where independent filmmakers can make a name for themselves. All of us, everybody out there who has this dream of making films, we now have platforms. We have cameras that are available to us.
Absolutely.
We have platforms that are available to us.
Software.
Like
Easy.
a lot of things that were not available 10, 20, 30 years ago.
You think that's going to saturate the market?
The cream will always rise to the top.
It's true.
That is my theory on all saturation. The cream will always rise. I've actually never made cream, so I've never seen it rise, but it's insane. I've heard before. So So speaking of,
I was about to do. I can't do it, but I always go to whenever I hear the cream, the little monologue about the two little mice from Catch Me If You Can.
oh yes, I don't remember the monologue, but I do remember the film.
I can't remember the monologue either, but my head goes there every time.
Mike is having acting flashbacks.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: so there are a lot of independent film directors out there who quite often run into the what I call star-studded. Oh man, I want to be like X. I want to be like Y. You know what I mean? They have this director that if they could swap their lives for that director's career, it is, whomever. But most of the time, those directors seem almost unattainable. I'm sure if I mentioned Steven Spielberg right now, most people would sit there and go, man, I would love to be Steven Spielberg, but I can never be Steven Spielberg because, man, he's doing this, he's doing that.
Yeah.
There are a couple of directors that we've all chosen to talk about that we were going to talk kind of like a then and now. What films you saw early on in their career that kind of got you, not necessarily making it your favorite director, but definitely a director that you follow. And more importantly, what hurdles you may have seen that they overcame as an early filmmaker versus what they're doing now. And the reason why this is important is because it's always important to kind of remember all superheroes have an origin story. So do all directors, all writers, all cinematographers, artists in general, musicians,
everybody.
Origin stories. So I'm going to actually start with Zaid this time. And Zaid, tell me about a director that we would not consider an independent film director, but really should be.
I will say this one thing. I think we all agree that at one point every director was an independent director. But the guy I chose to pick was a toss-up, but I'm going to go with Quentin Tarantino. And I know most of you guys, Quentin Tarantino, but man, he changed the game. He's like one of the first guys that ever went with telling a non-linear story. He wrote, his writing's phenomenal, and what I love to call him an indie filmmaker to this day, because guess what, he does it the way he wants to, even in the world around him telling him like, boycott his movie, don't do that. Now I'm not saying some of the shit he does is right, but he does it his way. he changed the game. He changed how we do, how we write conversations. He changed. He wasn't scared to cross that like level with Kill Bill with gore, dude. You know, I just love his style, man. He's just like he'll take a dark moment and make it light, and you're like Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
In the indie film, 1.2 million. His first script that got picked up. I love the scene where he's got to cut his ear off. Well, I don't know why I came in mad.
You know how hard he fought for that song,
dude.
He fought hard to get that music and those songs and those
down to the
films.
music. That's how much he wants. Like when he creates a picture, down to the music. An interview with Jamie Foxx and Howard Stern, he talks about how Quentin Tarantino closed the door. He put him in a room, closed the door, and says, "Jamie, fuck those Gucci bags. Fuck that. Fuck your Range Rover. You're a fucking slave now." He's like, "What the hell?" And it's something I found out recently. Actually, it was Will Smith was supposed to go for the part.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And he backed out.
Yeah, he backed out of it.
Yeah.
Of course, the whole. I'm talking about Django.
Yep.
But
Django.
there's other films, Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill series, and God, bro, come on. I'm losing my train of thought, but the German in the very beginning, that scene.
Oh, and Glorious Bastards. Glorious Bastards.
That was like
probably one of my favorite scenes from Quentin Tarantino.
Bro.
Absolutely.
And again, just
it was like watching
characters.
The Waltz, man.
Yeah, his characters
magic,
are phenomenally written.
Yeah.
And then he's so involved again up to the music. He's so involved with the actors. He's so involved. Like he believes in his piece so much. He goes. He says, "You're not playing you. You're not going to get the part until you become my character that I want." That's how much he wants his art. He believes in art. So that's why, to me, he's a true indie filmmaker. And I was telling these guys earlier, when it came down to it, to me, an indie filmmaker is someone who sticks to what they believe in. And this is my art. Take it for what it is. You don't have to like it, but this is what I 100% believe in. And he's so involved, dude. I mean, he seems like neurotic and crazy sometimes, but I respect him as an artist, man.
He is. I mean, I respect him as an artist too, but
Yeah.
he is. And real quick, let me ask you a question. Considering Quentin's career, especially how and the pacing that he releases his films, what if you were going to sit down with Quentin real quick and be like, "Yo, Quentin, I want some advice." What advice from anything that you've learned from him? What advice would you take, or what advice would you apply to your own film?
But man, first of all, I'd be freaking starstruck if I met Quentin, and I'd be like kind of hesitant what I'm gonna tell him because he might say something crazy.
I would start personally, Quentin. If you ever watch this, which I'm honored.
Yeah, straight up.
We'll keep reaching out to Ridley and Quentin. We'll keep reaching out to you guys.
Is he following us? Is he following us?
Follow us, Quentin.
I promise you this. I promise you this. If I ever met Quentin, I would be like, "Hey, by the way, Zayd's a fan. Fuck you." Just to break the ice. He'd be like, "Fuck you too," and then we get into a conversation because he's gonna drop an F-bomb
or his bouncers like just snatch you out of there and you never have the conversation. But I say it's worth it. He take risks.
Yeah, but I'll be like, "Yo, watch episode 3. I totally told him I was gonna do it."
As he's getting drug away. Watch it, man.
I think him, man. He takes the time, like Mike says. We said earlier in one of our earlier first episodes, and it was he takes the time to mold the story. Like it's story to him first. And I don't know what I'd ask him, bro. I'd be starstruck. There's so many things that I want to ask him. 15%.
I heard. I don't know if it's an article or I forgot where I heard this. So I don't know if I can't say where I found it, but he says that when he writes, he's influenced by the music that he listens to. He listens to music while he writes.
And sometimes some other stuff he says.
Yep. So a lot of that stuff ends up in his film.
That's awesome.
And he was actually talking about Kill Bill, and he actually took it was like the culmination of a lot of Japanese art that he was following and doing research on at the time, mixed in with a couple of other things, and comic books was a big fan. He was a big fan of that at the time, and so it's interesting how these independent filmmakers, I would call them that, they pull influences together.
Yeah, they do.
And they got something in their head and they want to make it.
And it's interesting because, and I'll touch on this a little bit more later when I talk about my director, but Quentin on Reservoir Dogs, honestly didn't understand a lot of what the crew needed to do. And this is in an interview. You could go check it out, especially if you go on El Rey and check out Director's Chair. But if you look at it, Quentin will say in a number of interviews, nervous, didn't know what to do, went behind his dressing trailer and was like, fuck, I don't know, whatever. But one of the things that he will admit to knowing the entire time was he had a story locked in his head, just nailed. He knew his characters, he knew his story, he knew what he wanted to get on film, what he wanted to get on camera, what lens to use, what lights to use, and stuff like that. He luckily relied on his crew. That's not always the case, but you don't always have enough of a crew to rely on. But we'll get into that in some other stories. But the point is that he, as a director, had a vision, stuck with it. And that's where Reservoir Dogs was birthed from, which I absolutely love.
Quentin was born. And to be honest with you, I didn't know about Quentin until Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, Will. And it was like 2003.
Zaid and I have known each other for a long time, and we have a friend out there named Will Guaba. If you're listening,
and he introduced
you should be watching us right now, you bastard. All right, moving on.
And I remember seeing, he's like, oh, yeah, he had the entire library of all Quentin's films, and I was like, all right, I'm at his house, we're at our house, and I put in Reservoir Dogs, and he always forced us sometimes to watch it, and I was like, the opening scene at the table was like, it was just organically awesome, dude.
There's one thing. If there's one thing that I can say more than anything about Quentin Tarantino is his ability to hold just this magical conversation, to write and to capture. I mean, you see it, and it's repeatable in his movies. I mean, you got Reservoir Dogs, then you've got Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, you haven't even
something about a damn at a damn table. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, hey, put some people around a table, and I guarantee you're gonna be mesmerized.
The German bar when he messed around and gave the wrong three, and they're all sitting.
Spoiler alert!
I know. It's been out forever, so you haven't seen it by now.
I'm messing.
Yeah.
But everyone knew it's about to go down, and it was just nothing said, but the intensity, like, oh shit.
Yeah. It's a great moment, man. Yeah. Great scene. Yeah, for sure.
Mike, I'd ask you, but listen, if you're out there, please leave comments. Let us know some of the directors that you know started off in the indie, and what indie film that you may have seen that you were like, yo, this is the first film I watched, and they were independent. Now they're doing probably larger Hollywood blockbuster films. Let us know in the comments. Hit us up on Facebook. I would love to hear some of the directors' choices that you guys have. Mike, tell us about a director that you loved, you enjoyed their journey.
Yeah, well, I mean, I recently, because of work purposes, I've had to do some research on Kevin Smith, and I've found him interesting. I've watched some of his Clerks and his earlier works from the beginning a while ago. But I actually watched last night Tusk, which was I found is a great movie. It was really good. I could talk about it. There's ups and downs to it, but Kevin Smith, man, I think that. I listened to a couple interviews that he gave, and I'm always mesmerized by somebody who gets out there and he's kind of got a rags to riches story. You know what I mean? And I know it's a little cliche. But this guy was legitimately, Clerks was his story almost. Yeah. You know what I mean? He was that person behind the counter, but nonetheless, he went out and I forget the name of the movie that influenced him. But there was this pivotal moment in his life when he was in a movie theater and he was like, hey, you know what? That really stuck with me. Mm-hmm. I like this. And he had an idea in his head and he's wondering, and he went out there and he put whatever he could together and he gathered some money. And he said he borrowed some money from his mom, $3,000, his mother and his father, who supported him.
Credit cards.
Yep. And he went out there and he made Clerks.
Yeah.
And it was his thing, is what he wanted to do. And I always appreciate that. Right. So that's why I wanted to talk about Kevin Smith today, just because of that reason that's how we all, independent filmmakers and all of us who are aspiring to make a film, that's how we start, right?
Was Jay in Silent But was Jay actually his friend? Like the guy who plays, I guess the guy, that's funny as shit, the long hair in Clerks. Mm-hmm. He had it's Jay.
The blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was he. I think he came on.
Yeah, he wasn't.
He found him. He was an actor, a local actor or something like that.
I think they were. It's hard to tell because they're such friends now. It's kind of hard to tell where that origin story of their friendship. Kevin, again, you want to let us know.
Kevin, follow us at the rap party.
Well, it's interesting about that particular story and Kevin Smith is that in one of his interviews, and he was talking about Clerks and how that came about. He loves film, and he was watching films, and he wanted to do this thing, but he said like, yo, I couldn't find a film that was like about me, like about us, like him and his friends that like, there were either these like, these Hollywood beautiful films that he loved, or there were these like indie other films, and there were other things, but like he's like that. Hey, how about guys going to work? I mean, it was not to take anything away from Friday, but it was like Friday before Friday. It was that whole like, hey, guess what? This is a situation that happens in my life. This could happen in any day while he was working.
This could be a movie. What we
do
absolutely.
How many times do we have that thought? Like, yo, this what's happening right now? Could be a movie.
Like all the drama.
He took the mundane. I'm talking about literally the day to day, and he made the film, and it has a cult following, and it went on to do other similar films like that, Mallrats, and but. I appreciate that. I mean, from a personal perspective, I could separate myself from a movie that I wouldn't go out there and rave. Clerks is not on the top of my list of favorite films.
Right.
You know what I mean? I appreciate it. I thought it was very clever. I thought it was very creative from a filmmaker's perspective. And he understood the material that he wanted to make, and he executed very well. And then obviously that's the reason why it's successful. But Tusk, though. Oof. Tusk, that's another one that I was pleasantly surprised with.
I'm scared to watch it. I've heard stories about it. Now he's gonna make me watch it.
And it was, he came out the gate. First off, I love storytelling, but I love movies that tell stories. You know what I mean? So the actors are telling stories, and it's all kind of based on, there was this one time and once upon, you know what I mean? So in Tusk, there's a character that kind of does that. So the beginning to me was very, very interesting. I loved it. And it kind of had its ups and downs. Towards the kind of middle half of it, it kind of fell off a little bit. Still good. But then there was a moment in there when all of a sudden you figured out what was taking place, and you could see where the cult following came back in. And I can understand why it was successful for certain people. If you like Centipede, by the way.
Boy.
Another one, boy.
I can say Centipede's up here.
Human Centipede.
Yeah, Human Centipede. Yes, the movie Human Centipede. If you haven't seen it or if you haven't heard about it, I wouldn't even recommend that you go watch it.
Don't watch it with kids in the room.
It's really gross, and it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. So Tusk kind of goes in that route. So Human Centipede's up here in the disturbing factor, and Tusk is like, it's down here. It's not quite as bad.
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
I heard Tusk was like, and not bad as in bad movie. I was like, man.
You know what's interesting is that
it's bold.
And this was also in another. And if you guys like Kevin Smith and you haven't checked out Fat Man on Batman, we're not ashamed here. We'll plug another show. Go check out Fat Man on Batman. You can see just how down to earth Kevin Smith is. If you don't really follow his work, but you want to see another independent filmmaker who, honestly, no matter how many cool things he does, he's still like, bro, I don't even know why they pay me to do this shit. Go watch Fat Man on Batman. You'll get to know Kevin Smith real quick.
Who also directs TV shows like Flash.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's got shows like Flash. He's got a bunch of stuff like that, but still doing indie films, still doing things like that. And an interesting thing is that he went from like, you have your Clerks, and he had success off of that. And he went on to do other films. And according to him, he was like, I never really got a chance to do my experimental phase because I got picked up kind of not too quickly, but got picked up so quickly, and that's typically unheard of, that he never had a chance to really step away from the Hollywood machine and just kind of do experimental shit. Mm-hmm. And Tusk, Yoga Hosers, and stuff like that is kind of like, you know what? This film is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And Mike will tell you, this film is not for everybody.
I'm actually scared of watching, not because it's scared. Like, man,
it's a little, but you know what the thing is that it was done in a way where I was just like, oh, like it was. It wasn't
on the popcorn.
Like I didn't want to throw up.
I'm so curious.
Dude, you're selling me on this film.
I felt bad for the character. I don't want to say what it is, but there's this moment where I just was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And you feel bad for it, And then the parts that I dislike, because I believe that everything, me personally, is I felt that it went a little off track in the justification of what took place in the film, because something happens in there that's pretty, it's
intense.
It's pretty intense, right? And it happens to the main character. So this goes into story. I'm not going to get too far into it, but at the end of the day, the character doesn't come out triumphant.
Whoa.
What?
Spoiler
Stop.
See, I'm trying to do this.
Yeah.
I'm vetoing that.
I know. So at the end of the day, the character comes out triumphant for most films. Your typical hero's journey. But in some films, the character doesn't come out triumphant. You know what I mean? So the reason why he doesn't do that is usually because something was committed.
Understood. Okay.
You gotta watch it.
So from there, I won't say anything more. So long story short, what made it not fall off a little bit is I think he went back and he had to fill in the gaps to successfully make that happen. You know what I mean?
Well, you know,
it's hard to say it without spoiling it.
Real quick,
and
Nadine gave me the indication that we do have a couple of questions. Hold on 1 second. We're going to get to your questions in just a second. So if you wanted to, you're actually
You're gonna work
here going to work
Lucky
with him.
man.
So you get a moment to ask Kevin Smith the questions. So any advice, any particular thing that you would probably ask him?
Oh, yeah.
Take it to one question. Let me ask.
Tough one, dude.
You have one. It's like a genie. You got
Tough
one
one,
wish.
dude.
Ask him.
That's a real tough one.
Yep. I think it's that moment. I think it's that moment when, I saw some interviews, so he kind of answers this, but I'd like to hear it man to man. You know what I mean? It's that moment when you're about to put everything on the line, right? Your money, you're about to make this big decision, and you go, how do you know if it's worth it? And I know, and I hear it all the time. You know when you know, and it's in your gut. I get it. I get all of that. But I'm talking about what's that extra something? You know what I mean? How do you know when this is a film that I think I'm gonna pull the trigger on?
My girlfriend and or mom and or dad are gonna be like, yo, how much? What am I putting up? What are we doing for this?
Yes, exactly. I don't mind going to my mom and my dad and everybody around me and going, listen, believe in me, this is going to happen. That would probably be tell me about that, man. What was going through your head when you did that? Mm-hmm. Because that's kind of that's the big thing for me. You know what I mean?
I think sometimes I'm just trying to think if I would have asked him that or what, not that I'm Kevin Smith, but if you believe in your fucking art, and you can't, it's your, some people aren't going to understand your dream. It's your dream. It was given to you. That picture is for you. Some people just might not get it because that's the thing.
For
sure. That's always.
Yeah. That always comes back to you can't make a film for everybody. I mean,
I'm not. Yeah, that's the thing.
But there are some moments that you're right. Asking Kevin, when do you know?
Yep. Because the last thing is I'm not worried about pleasing everybody. But here's the thing. There's a difference between, for me, and that's why everybody's different. But there's a difference between I will go out and max out my credit cards, and I will spend every cent that I have in my bank account if my wife lets me, which she probably will have. She'll be like, yo, you better check yourself. There's exactly. But you know what I mean. I will do that on my own. But then there's that next level of not only am I going to do that on my own, but I'm going to ask you for your money. And your money, and your money, because I believe in it so much that I will ask for your money. That's a hard thing for me, and that might be a personal thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, so it is. It's tough. Nadine, you said you had some comments and questions. Let's take a moment to address some of those.
Lucy Gonzalez says she loves Mark Webb, who jumped from a rom-com indie to Amazing Spider-Man franchise.
That's true.
Yeah, good call. Good call.
Great call, Lucy.
And she's also asking if you guys like Jonathan Liebsman.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Lucy.
I don't know who Jonathan is.
I'm gonna have to Google that. I'm not entirely familiar with Jonathan.
That's why we got.
Yeah, that's why we have that. I'm not good with names, so it'd have to be a couple.
There are. Here's the thing: is that I've always been one of those person. I'm a face guy, and I hate that in business. It sucks. You have to learn and remember names.
Yeah. That's my biggest fault. I don't know.
But I definitely do.
Yeah, he's good. Who's good at that is Conrad. Conrad knows usually directors. He'll know the names of the directors. Boom, boom.
Oh, he did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The original or the new one?
No, the new ones.
No, the new ones. Wrath of the Titans, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Some big ones. What's his first ones? What's his first films?
Because I'm definitely not a film of the new Teenage Mutant, a fan of the new, but yeah.
Michael Bay
keeps going.
And produced it. So maybe he wrote it.
So while we're looking,
while
we're looking that up, is there
is that IMDb?
It's Rings. Rings is his first one.
Rings or Ring?
Rings.
Some of those films are older than Rings. Check out his IMDb. Meanwhile, is there any other questions?
No, that's it for now.
All right.
Guys, ask questions.
So while we figure out what's his name?
We'll come back to that. We
Jordan
promise. We're
Liebsman.
pulling up.
All right. So while Nadine looks up his IMDb, I guess I'll go next, and then we'll go to Nadine. I'm gonna go with Robert Rodriguez. If you follow me, if you follow me on any of my things, you probably see me post "Rebel Without a Crew," which is his film, which is his book. Sorry, about him making El Mariachi, and it's not just what he does now, going from indie filmmaker all the way to network owner. He's now running El Rey Network, which is a fantastic network if you're looking to look at some throwback films. But also he has I think he is executive producer on like 5 or 6. I have notes, but whatever. 5 or 6 episodes series. But he also has on his site, if you go to elreynetwork.com or elrey.com, he has it where you could submit your content directly to his network so long as it fits the network brand.
That's awesome.
So not only is an independent filmmaker who's gone through the gamut and now is on the network, but he is also supporting independent filmmakers out there to supply things to his network. So again, here's another venue that was just not available even when he was making his film. And Robert Rodriguez is known for El Mariachi, Desperado, Spy Kids. He also best friends with Quentin. They're besties.
Besties.
In 95, Desperado and Reservoir Dogs debuted at the same time. They met at a film festival. And if you read Rebel Without a Crew, it's really a journal. It's a journal about his making El Mariachi and then what happened beyond that. And it is a filmmaker's journey. And you get to see you get to read the trials and tribulations between his family.
That's awesome. Being
outside of, being in Texas, being in LA, being in, and doing that kind of thing. And the funny thing is that El Mariachi, he did what most filmmakers need to go ahead and do is he was going to make it a throwaway film. He shot it with the intention of putting it in a foreign market so that no one would ever see his mess ups. He didn't want anybody to see him screw up.
That he was using his grip, like he was in Mexico using his grips and like PAs or
What grips and PAs?
That's what I'm saying. Well, okay, sorry.
No. It's called Rebel Without a Crew because he shot it and lit it and even did the audio and everything by himself. He got local people to be actors and stunt people, and he reused other people. And my man recorded this thing on 16 millimeter because 35 millimeter was too expensive.
Now that is going indie.
Hold on, hey.
Yeah, that's straight up indie.
He recorded this thing for $7,000. He donated his body to a clinical lab, for like, I don't know.
For the film, right?
For the film, to get $3,000 of the 7. He only got 3 of the 7. Most of the money went into film stock and the camera rental from his film school. My man actually had a tape recorder. And you guys, listen, most of you may be too young to remember this. There's this thing called a tape. And you had to play, record, rewind, fast forward, eject. Okay? He had one of those things with a mic. And he recorded the shot. Okay, Mike, say your line. Cool. Yeah. As soon as Mike and Zaid finish their lines, cool, stop. Okay, now repeat it. I'm going to record that. Repeat your lines, but do it the exact same way you did, as close as you can. And then synced it later. Ooh. He edited the film. He transferred it from, because he couldn't edit it on film. So he transferred the film to VHS, and his first copy of it was a VHS tape player's recording, pause, record, pause, record, pause. That's how he edited his first version of the film.
So no premiere?
Wow.
No premiere in sight. Oh my God.
Mind you, meanwhile, his actually one of his first films, Bedhead, which was recorded on VHS with his brother and sister as the actors, was actually getting some film festival praise. They're like, it's not bad. It's actually kind of cute. You can actually check it out on YouTube. Check out Bedhead. But what I like about Robert Rodriguez to this day, even after he got Desperado and even after he went on to do a bunch of other things, on Grindhouse, which he teamed up with Quentin Tarantino, and I'm talking about
Ballsy.
I'm talking about Planet. Shit, running blank right now. Planet Terror.
Yeah, Planet Terror.
He was like, you know what? I need this girl to get pulled up out of the thing, and he said, screw it. We're not going to rent a big old studio. We're going to use a clear blue sky, a crane, and key out the sky. And meanwhile, on Once Upon a Time in Mexico, he did the sound effects. He has his own little sound studio. He records his own music. My man still thinks on an indie budget. And personally, Robert, you're one of my heroes, brother.
I mean, that's why when you come from that nitty gritty, that's like a great example. I love to tell my friend Will, or even Damien. You take a Cuban kid who's been playing baseball. They hit sticks with
tape.
With tape or a little rock, and that's how they play baseball. Now take a bat, a bigger surface, and throw him a ball. You think he's not gonna knock that thing out the park? That's why Cubans and Dominicans are killing it. Same for him. Now you got a guy who just recorded with a camera like this. Now give him a crew.
Give him a crew and a budget.
Yeah.
And also he's like, what?
It's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Which, by the way, interestingly enough, he did El Mariachi for $7,000, and it grossed about $2 million after it got distributed, reproduced. And Columbia Pictures picked it up, put about $1 million in post-production into it, and it grossed about $2 million, and it's made some more money since then. Got $7 million for Desperado, and it grossed $25 million. So proportionally, it was the same.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean?
And it was a game changer, I heard, too.
Oh, my God. It introduced the world to Antonio Banderas, Selma Hayek. I mean, come on.
They were saying that at that time when he did that, there's like, no, there's no way you could shoot a blockbuster for $7 million. And other movie houses and writers. So he said, movie houses were like, wait a minute. So he just produced a movie for $7 million. Now you gotta try to produce it lower. And then I just remember they were fighting
That's
back and
it,
forth.
yeah.
Hey.
That's usually what happens though. Somebody comes in and does it for cheaper and then sets the bar. Unfortunately, it's not fair.
Nope.
You know what I mean? But someone sets the bar, and now everything needs to come in at that price.
Right.
I'm like, dude, Jack Nicholson's 20 alone.
Yeah. Exactly. Even though Steven Spielberg when he did his first war film, had guys, kicking up planks kick up sand, and he was cutting real World War II footage with his footage to make his first war film. That's very creative, by the way, for a young Stevie. I call him Stevie because we're on that name basis.
You know Stevie?
Yeah, I know Stevie, man. He calls me up every now and then. He's like, yo, man, what's that new project you're working on, bro? And I'm like, yeah, man, it's nothing much. I get real humble real quick.
Thing, yeah.
So,
what would you ask him?
What was his earliest film, by the way?
His earliest film was a short called Genesis and Catastrophe, and then it was Darkness Falls. And Ring was
I've seen
another
Darkness
short.
Falls. Okay.
And then after that was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Then The Killing Room. Then Battle of Los Angeles, Wrath of the Titans, and then Teenage Mutant.
Yeah, you could definitely see how that budget climbed.
Yeah, and then he's been working. The latest thing was the Shannara Chronicles, a TV series.
Okay, so to answer your question, yes, we love the Shannara Chronicles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, the jury's out on. Wrath of the Titans, I enjoyed. Battle of Los Angeles was just kind of fun. It was fun. Obviously, they love visual effects.
I had fun.
It wasn't those popcorn.
It's fun. It's entertaining. It's a popcorn.
Yeah.
But definitely, yes, there are some.
I did not know he directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, though. I like that movie.
So definitely, there are some films that we can
I
pick
have to
out.
ask you the same question you asked us. If you had a question, what would you ask Robert?
Okay, dear Robert.
That's what I was about to say. I said, dear Robert.
I guess the question would be.
Say it in your writing voice.
In my what voice?
In your writing voice.
In my writing voice? Hold on,
Dear Robert.
I've made my first few films, and now I'm wondering, is it possible? Would you go with an agent? Though I know you did. Is an agent still important for a budding filmmaker? Signed, your truest fan, Damien Alpert.
I mean, Damien uses his formula.
XOXO.
Killed it.
Stars. Exclamation point, smiley face.
PS,
Hearts with arrows.
Hearts with arrows.
If you ever read now anything of that Damien writes, that is the voice that he's writing in. That's the voice he's writing in.
Is there a PS, Damien?
All his comments on Facebook, that's what he's saying. That's out loud.
Dear Natalia. Yes. So Nadine.
That's interesting though, because I never had that. Again.
Would you have my man voice on?
I mean,
would you imagine?
Was I more British?
Film directors back in the day might have also had agents. Like that never. Like,
he got that after El Mariachi, but still, it was one of those things that it was like he went that route, and not all directors go that route. But it is interesting because, let's face it, most film directors, most indie filmmakers know a few things, and one of the things they know is the film they want to make. Selling said film is a whole different topic that we will get into on another episode.
Yep.
But after you've got the film, getting it out there, distribution and selling it, way different topic.
Another mission.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's, making the film is just the first step, one of the first steps. So Nadine, real quick, what's yours? What's your director choice?
My choice is Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, good one.
Just because he, really, especially growing up, he was my inspiration. Like, he had such a different style. Like, even the movies that, he did Hellboy, he did Blade, which, great movies. I love the series. Like, I was so into them. But my biggest choices for him were The Devil's Backbone. Love that movie. It was just, it's such a simple setting, and yet the movie takes you to so many places in there, emotionally, and you're going through what this kid is going through, and at the same time, it's it has so many heavy pauses. They had weight to them, even though it's just kids in this building in the desert in the middle of nowhere. And the other one was Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. That was a huge movie for me because it had more of his style in it. It had that, that dark, whimsical. That classic, very dark, very stylized type of
characters were awesome
movie. The characters were amazing, but it's still centered around, you have this child, this is what this child is going through, and there's a lot of heavy subjects going around the whimsical, Tooth Fairy. Yes, you have these little creatures who are trying to kill the child, but here you see a child that's being ignored by her parents.
Interesting.
You have this heavy subject that he shows it in another way.
Yeah. So if you were going to ask Guillermo.
I
can't say it in English. I got to say it in Spanish. Guillermo del Toro. What would you ask him?
Can I stalk you for a day?
Hey, you know what? Shadowing a director.
Can I get your number?
Yo. I know you're not doing Hellboy 3, but
Yeah. Could you Hellboy 3, please?
Did I strike a chord? No, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, they're rebooting Hellboy. So
that's awesome. Well, I mean, that's cool. I mean, it sounds like we got a slate of films that if you haven't seen these films, why? So over here, Quentin Tarantino. Right? Reservoir Dogs, if you haven't seen it.
Start you off
go see where it started, where it all began.
Pulp Fiction, you know what I mean? Some of his earlier works, stuff like that. Here, if you haven't seen Tusk, Mallrats, or Clerks, go watch that stuff. There's definitely some cool indie films to check out. And then
you could just watch the whole Desperado trilogy. You can go El Mariachi if you want to see how it really began. But you can go Desperado 2, and then Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Johnny Depp's character.
And if you want to see Quentin and Robert collaborate, they collaborate on a number of things like Dusk Till Dawn, and obviously the whole Grindhouse films, because that was kind of like their thing growing up.
They're trying to see who could be the goriest.
Yeah, so I mean, so there's a couple of things that you could watch there, and for Gilmore.
Definitely Pan's Labyrinth if you haven't seen it yet, but definitely check out Devil's Backbone. It's actually a little.
Yeah. I haven't seen Devil. I have to check out the trailer to see it because I forget some of the movies that I've watched. But Devil's Backbone is something I'm definitely gonna check out.
Absolutely. So here's another thing, and we're running a little.
Yeah, we're running a little bit over.
A little bit over, but we also started. We had a lot to talk about today. So if you're still with us, thank you. Bear with us with it a little bit because we want to make sure that all of you out there, especially those of you that are independent filmmakers, have something else to go on, because there's definitely something that we want to talk to you about, and that is what happens after you have your script and story and you're ready to take that leap. And you've made the decision, whether it's your own money or someone else's money.
Yep.
You're ready to take that leap. And we're going to quickly touch on this. I will definitely promise you we'll dedicate an entire episode to this matter, but it is important to talk about this now. So, and I'm going to actually go to Mike first. Mike, script, done. It could be revised or whatever the case, but you got your script, you got your story, you're ready to do this.
Yep.
What's the next step?
Assuming that you have the budget, right? Which I'm not gonna get into. The budget could be $5. Won't be ever be $5. You're gonna have to buy somebody food. You're gonna have to buy a sandwich for your crew. But assuming that you have your budget, whether it's $500 or $250,000, if you're talking just low end, you know what I mean? I'm not going to get into that. So what's next after that is get into pre-production, because if you get into the pre-production phase, right, with said budget, you've set it on there. You know what? I'm going to make this film for $3,000, right? And you know that. Okay, awesome. And you've achieved that. Then start your pre-production. And I guarantee you, once you go down that road with the budget in your back pocket of the pre-production process, your film will get made. Because you're going to start checking off boxes. You're going to start checking off boxes, and you're going to get excited, and that's the big thing. A lot of people don't start that process, so they fail to execute.
What? Give me some boxes that you would check off. Not all of them. Just give me some of the boxes that you would check off. Listen, call sheet is necessary if you want your friends to show up. I'm gonna battle you on call sheet, and I'm horrible about sending them out, but I will battle you on that. Come on.
Boxes to check off in pre-production. Listen, I apart from cast, I don't even want to touch on the obvious ones. Go out there and start putting together locations. Go to locations. Start imagining these scenes and where you're going to see them, obviously, and then figure out how the hell you're going to shoot it. What are you going to shoot it on, right? Yeah. So start picking some of your equipment out, and it doesn't have to be complicated equipment, but just go ahead and pick out. If it's going to be your freaking iPhone, then go shoot it on your iPhone, you know what I mean? But I think the locations is probably the big one, and then characters. You know, when you start hearing your lines come to life, that's a bright moment in, I think, the pre-production phase.
Would you think if it's your own piece? I know when we deal with clients, first you want to know, I need to know what your budget is, because then we know how far we can push. Mm-hmm. If it's your own piece, would you do? Because I know sometimes I do this. Say, you know what? Let me see how I could do this right before I even have my budget. Well, now I know what I need to sacrifice. So how can I cut corners? Who can I ask favors if I can ask favors? These are the guys that are, you know, you're just starting with your first script, that kind of deal. Would you say maybe you could start with that as well? Like start with your pre-pro before you do the budget to try to get an idea how much money you need to put together?
Start with the pre-pro. Well, I mean, then you're getting into
your script before story before script.
Yeah, and technically, I mean, you'd want somebody to sit down in a professional world and actually go line producer. You want a line producer to come on board and break down your budget.
Which typically might be your wife or girlfriend or mom, and might be like, you want how much for this film? No, you get $500. Go.
So part of it, they kind of go hand in hand, I think. The budgeting portion of figuring out what the budget is kind of goes hand in hand with the pre-production phase.
Yeah, but you can't afford that,
for sure. So you're thinking about it. You can't not go through the budgeting phase without thinking about that stuff. You know, this person's wearing a blue blouse. Well, I don't have a blue blouse in my closet, so that means I got to go either buy it or go to Goodwill or whatever the case would be. So I think they do go hand in hand. But I think the pre-production phase is when you actually stop thinking about things and stop looking at numbers and start to actually envision. And to me, that's what gets you going, is because you see the characters saying the lines. You see the house that you've always envisioned that you were just was just on paper. You know what I mean? So that to me is like, once you start getting that stuff together, that's when I think you won't stop at that point.
How would you say you think there's any roadblocks? I'm addressing Mike because I know he deals with this on like crazy. But would you say how to deal with roadblocks? Like, shucks, I know that I'm gonna need this. What would you suggest somebody, what to do?
Like, I mean, that would be a very broad, but like, I'd say always know a guy. Have a guy for, you know what I mean? Guy or girl in a politically correct world, but always know a guy. Hey, my air conditioner broke. Right? Hey, I got a guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's the best thing that you could do.
Your connections are going to save you.
Thank you.
Well, that's why we help each other as filmmakers. There should be like a clique or a friend that's like, dude, Damien called me sometimes. Dude, can you clean this sound up for me? Like, yeah, bro, send it my way.
Yep. Always have a guy. The connection.
And if you don't know a guy, start looking at John Croft. He's on Facebook. If you look him up, he always has in Tampa, by the way. He always has a film networking group that gets together once a month, and they share resources. Go to your local film school, art school. You're going to always find a video production school. You're always going to find willing people that are willing to get stuff on there. Craigslist.
Absolutely.
There's always people out there that want to work on something in the film industry, and you just got to have a good idea and great story, and at least and kind of have your stuff together a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Be creative.
Zaid, what would you put? You don't have to give us the whole checklist, but what are like one thing that you would definitely put on that checklist for that pre-pro?
Man, I think Mike hit it, dude. He hit it right on the button. That pre-pro is so important. Just go down.
Well, what would you check off on that pre-pro press? Because he said location scouting is definitely one of the big ones. Budgeting, we've already understood.
It's crazy. This might sound crazy, but logistics to me, it's like, can it really happen with the budget you have?
So if my script is an alien invasion with an entire crowd of people and my budget's only $500, probably logistically.
I go straight logistic. I'm counting hours. I'm going back, dude. There's no way the man hours can happen. You trying to say for $500? Wait. So either I try to make it work. I know a guy. Find a friend who has the thing, or
I know a guy with a bug collection. And some fishing string and a macro lens. You know what I'm saying? You might be able to make it happen if you know a guy. You know what I'm saying? Hey, true story.
That's oddly specific.
Yes, hey, it might have happened at one point. There might have been a mosquito fighting a butterfly. I'm just saying. I don't know.
I'm a stickler for logistics, man. I'll sit there and say, wait a minute. So you're telling me you got a 5-day shoot, you're trying to fit into 3? It's not gonna happen, brother.
Of course, there's common sense. There's absolutely common sense.
So
for sure. You gotta be able to.
It's strange that's how I always. The first thing when I gravitate to a project, I say, can this really happen? In the time you're giving me, with the manpower you're trying to. Well, all I need is one grip, and I can tell my friend to hold audio, and I need one camera guy. Like, it's not gonna work, dude. There's no way it's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? So.
All right, so let's flip it to less roadblock scenario, and let's look at it from again. I'm gonna use Robert because that's dude. I know a lot about him. He uses brother and sister. I know it sounds kind of man crushy, but it's not. I just studied several directors, and he's one of them. When you're looking at Robert, I know creepy.
Robbie, I love you.
Ass. I can say ass on this. This is our show.
Robbie tattoo on his leg.
Hey, it's I love Robbie on his butt cheek.
On his belly button. He has it on his belly button.
Oh, on his belly button.
Oh man, how'd you know? Anyway,
our heart GD. DA.
Point being is that he casted his brother and sister because he didn't know any actors the first time around. He used available camera equipment and available stuff. So I'm gonna flip it and give the pre-production I'm gonna give pre-production if you're starting off and you're just getting into your first film. I'm gonna make pre-production almost before story and script. And this is odd because normally you have story and script first, but I'm gonna give pre-production just a little bit before that because I'm gonna say, look at your available surroundings, look at the guy you know, look at the stuff that you may have, that camera or whatever, and say, okay, based upon this, what story can I do? And then go from there. That's another way of looking at it from a smaller film. Now, mind you, let's say you're a writer and you wrote the film and you're a director and you want to direct the film and you're like, okay, well now, and you flip it back to the normal spot and you're like, okay, story and everything's done. I'm going into pre-pro now. One of the big check boxes that I would put hands down is research. And this is not something that most people probably say. Research another film like yours and see what went into making their film. And I know it's like, well, wait a minute, nothing's like my film. My film's never been done before. Oh, hold on there, buddy. There's a lot of stories out there.
It probably has been.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories out there, and you may have a unique twist. And I hate to bust that bubble, but if you're looking at boy meets girl story, you may have to look at the most lowest budget boy meets girl story and say, okay, well, look at their IMDb and look at their cast, look at their crew and say, okay, well, I don't have all of that. I have this. Let me figure out what I can do. And we just recently talked about a production and I may have to, do a couple chops because the budget's not there.
I Zaid that shit, man.
Yeah. Yo.
I said Damien.
Yo.
I said
he sat me down all gentle like. He made sure that I had a. He's like, hey.
I gave him a shoulder massage.
Tea. I did. Listen, that story you have, it's fantastic. Love it. But
not gonna happen.
Logistically.
No, it's going to happen in some way, but But
Yeah, don't let it.
But that's
The
why
bug
it's
guy. Remember
important.
the string and the bug guy?
it might be
God damn, string of bugs.
it might be a Barbie in a little car.
Oh, my clients are not going to be happy to hear that.
But that's why it's important for you to plan your scenes before you go on shooting. Always plan your scene and what you're gonna do, what you're gonna shoot, who's gonna be where before you go out there with your whole crew, and then you're like, oh shit,
Absolutely.
I'm missing a scene.
But you know, one of the best friends and worst enemies of a young filmmaker is naiveness. You know what I mean? I think if you go out there sometimes and you just do it, we all of us here have experience, a good amount of experience on the commercial side and the film side of things. We do this, so we tend to think of it with a little bit more logic, whereas somebody who's super young and doesn't have I'd call it the producing experience, they might go out there and sure, they might jump into it head first and bite off more than they could chew, but it becomes a problem-solving type of situation where if you can solve those problems and still stay true to your story, that bullheaded naiveness might actually serve you well.
Yeah.
I can't.
It
lie.
will.
I was that gentleman once, and it actually serves me well. Much like you were saying, where Rod Rodriguez learned to, think on your toes fast. Why? Because I was that guy who wasn't given camcorder. So how am I gonna make this work?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to be said about diving in, and I think one of the biggest problems that most young filmmakers, and I say young meaning young in the game, not necessarily young in age. Most of the problems that they make is that they hesitate. They decide to write the story. They have an idea. Then they finally get past the idea and decide to write the story. Then they write the story and they're like, they either jump in or they stay at story, and they don't go through the pre-production. And you could also get lost in pre-production world. The hardest thing overproduce. The hardest thing is turning the camera on and saying, okay, that's it. We got to go. We got to do it. Yeah. So we also obviously want to warn you against don't overproduce, don't over pre-produce, don't overthink it. Some things just have to get done. The bigger the budget, the bigger the things, you'll have more people to rely on for you to help you with that.
Other producers, yeah.
Right. But, for now, starting off, you got friends, families, maybe other colleagues that may be interested in helping you out. Get them together, get organized, pick a date. Setting a date is a huge thing. I think personally, for starting filmmakers, setting a date, because then you're kind of obligated to get going, because now you've got all these people who are going to show up on this date.
Yeah, especially if you're with other people, then you're scheduling it with all.
Now you're kind of obligated.
Yeah,
but nothing's ever done for free, because you've got to at least feed the people. Pizza and beer counts as a budget. Sorry,
not the greatest budget though, but yes.
But it is a budget. You got to pay for pizza and beer. So. And
pizza is the last thing I will ever give my crew. But yes, I will give them if I have no other choice.
Yep. So
and I apologize.
We have definitely run over. We apologize for that. But hey, listen, we had a great time. Zaid, anything you want to say? Last thoughts?
Guys, keep watching the show, man. We're here to support. Just like us, we're dreamers. We're creators. We want to hear. We want to see your films, man. Send them to us. Let us talk about your film. It doesn't have to be these big budget fucking films that we want to watch. I would love to see someone send in. And don't overthink it. Don't be like, they're going to hate it. They're going to kill it. No, we're not, dude. We look with everything with open eyes, man. We all have our first films that suck ass. But we would love, please, someone send in your film. I would love to just talk about it. And then maybe even have you on and we'll talk about, where the inspiration came from.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even a script.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. If you got a script out there, we would love to. You know what I mean? We'd love to read your script and, and give you some feedback. I mean, that's part of the process. But I think, in the overarching thing, just get out there, and I got to take my own advice to some extent because we all do this and we tend to overproduce in some worlds, and just do it, right? Mm-hmm. Just do it. You got an idea, smartly, you know what I mean? Don't be stupid about it. Use a little bit of brain power, but just go in there with a bullhead and just do it, man. You got an idea.
Nadine?
Don't overthink it too much. If you've got something, even if you think it's too rough, just send it over, because that's how you grow too. Peer review, and this way you can get criticism.
Huge,
you can get
absolutely.
critique. You can actually, even if it's still in the making, you're still editing or whatever it be, having somebody else look at it that it's not in your circle can give you another set of eyes, another viewpoint that will get you to where you want to be.
Absolutely. I love getting critiques, especially from these guys, because
That's how you grow, man.
they definitely, not in a negative way, they definitely can give me different perspective. It's always important to realize that, hey, you know what, you might miss something, or you might get stuck, and you're like, damn, I just can't get around this particular hurdle. And I get advice from the most odd places, even my parents, because they watch films all the time, and they're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, you know what? That's brilliant. As I sip on my cafe,
Ooh,
and my
cafe.
advice to you guys is we are always afraid of other people's opinions. I think almost every performer, and by the way, directors and filmmakers are performers, because they're putting a piece of art out there. They're putting a piece of themselves out there, so you are performing. It is going in front of an audience. There will be good and bad critiques. Look, everything from Wonder Woman all the way down to what we talked about last week was Skin. Doesn't matter. It all gets critiqued. You just got to put yourself out there, and don't get hung up on any one thing. You just got to keep moving forward. And yeah, definitely send your stuff in. We will love to help out. We'd love to talk about it. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. The Rap Party under Indie Raps. If you look us up on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen out there, we want to raise our glasses and thank you one more time for joining us. Also, we want to thank the Bricks as always for supporting us. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap,
Yeah,
guys. Cheers.
As we awkwardly wait for the Facebook Live to end.
Don't say that.